a very warm welcome to the India Today Education Roundtable, the latest initiative by the India Today Group to discuss threadbare the important issues that are shaping how we live today. Moving on to our session, and it's a very contentious issue. Should schools and universities reduce fees for digital learning? Well, we have with us Mr. Sudhakar Rao, Director Branding of ICFAI Group, talking to us a little bit about that.
At the outset, I would like to thank the India Today Group for inviting me to share my views on this topic of should schools and universities reduce fees because it is digital learning now. Before we get into the topic, we need to understand the background according to me. When the pandemic hit, it hit very hard. All the sectors, all the segments have suffered quite a bit, including education. In India and abroad, we are all compelled to have remote access to the things that we have been doing earlier face-to-face, now on a distant format, a format using technologies which can gain access to the activities, including that of learning, including that of consultation, including that of access for entertainment, so on and so forth. In India, last March onwards, 37 crore students have been compelled to move away from their places of learning, namely schools, colleges, or universities. The situation was grave. A population as large as that of India had to go through these unprecedented times. Now, what has happened with education sector? Education sector very quickly bounced back and put in place some kind of activity that created an access and a regain to the learning processes. To put in a perspective, what has happened in India, I would like to mention in three important phases. The phase one was a settling down phase. The pandemic hit, everyone was confused. They gathered their wits and thought they should get back to business. That's the settling down phase. Phase two was the phase of building your capacities, identifying the technologies to create access to learning for your students, which technology to be adopted, orienting the faculty members, and then managing to deliver your promised agenda for the students. And the third phase has been a phase of maturity in which, through the online mode, schools, colleges, and universities have managed to create their differentiation, which they have been delivering through the face-to-face campuses. During the maturity phase, the philosophy of the school, the strength of the organizations, and agility in their thinking have come to their rescue. More than anything else, we need to understand how the adoption of technology worked out. The adoption of technology worked out in again three important phases. In first phase, people scrambled for whatever was available in terms of the video conferencing tools like Zoom, WhatsApp, Microsoft, Google Meet, so on and so forth. In phase two, the institutions galloped a little bit and understood that they need a learning management system that gives them the confidence of delivering value through a console that is pretty close to their educational system. So they searched for learning management systems which were white label learning management systems. They were available in the market. And in phase three, again it's a maturity phase where institutions thought they should have their own customized learning management systems through which again the differentiation is possible, their philosophy is reflected well, the experience for the student as well as the teacher would be complete, and therefore it will be different, and therefore it will be memorable. So Organizations which invested in technology, organizations which thought through very well, have reached the maturity phase pretty fast. So this is the background. Now, the argument that we need to reduce fees just because it is digital learning is not fair. According to me, if you think of the problems the institutions have faced vis-a-vis other segments in this country, there were SOPs given to everyone. SOPs given to MSMEs, SOPs given to other industries like manufacturing, SOPs given to chemical industries. Every segment was more or less covered. The 20 lakh crore package was aimed at resolving some of these issues plaguing various other industries except education. As a result, a large number of private budget school teachers across the country had to resort to ways and means of making their ends meet by picking up professions other than their own, which meant they left education, then they had to go as agricultural laborers, they had to go as casual laborer or something else. The pathetic situation we landed in was because the parents were not paying the fees. When parents do not pay the fees, already wafer-thin margins that they had in private budget schools has showed up as a very big fault line in our education system. Education is not just about you pay the fees and get your progress card or obtain your degrees and move on your life. Education is about learning. We need to learn to respect the very system which has built the entire society. It is not mere transactional today to say that the cost incurred in delivering the education is apparently less, therefore that has to be passed on to the benefit has to be passed on to the customer. This is not something akin to a negotiation that you do with a vegetable vendor. This is not a wholesale price where you would like to deal with when you buy something in bulk. These are issues which are very real. The amount of effort the faculty member and the institution are putting in to create a school and a college online overnight is something amazing. We need to appreciate and accord the right value for the education that is being delivered. You think from the point of the school, it will be wrong. Think from the point of the child. The biggest casualty of the pandemic is the learning ethic. Kids at home are learning in different styles. They are not able to actually learn properly. But still the institutions are trying to deliver what they could. Your child who was supposed to go to the school was not going, but still he or she has been getting the promised learnings. We should be thankful. And whatever you always wanted to pay, you should pay now, instead of arguing that the cost incurred for the institution is less. In fact, it is also wrong to argue that the cost incurred in terms of electricity or water expenses. No, an institution is run with a variety of forecasting of costs in terms of what they have already borrowed, in terms of what their operating expenses are. The EMIs have not been totally waived off. They have just been postponed, which meant they had to pay very soon. The buses that they purchased, there are EMIs on that. Only the diesel expenses were less. The salaries for the drivers were there. They paid the salaries for teachers. They paid the salaries for supporting staff. Maintenance was to be done even if the students were not visiting the campus, with the hope that very quickly the cases would come down and the government would revoke the order of lockdown, and then unlockdown would help them open the classes. In that perennial hope, everybody maintained their campuses spick and span. Added to this, the standard operating procedures that were communicated for maintaining a virus-free environment also meant they incurred additional cost. Now, with all this in mind, with the societal value that we have always accorded for education, and with the deep understanding that there's a greater effort on part of institution and the university and the teacher to continue the education. Based on all these three facts, I think we should not argue for reducing the fees. Some of the institutions, in fact, most of the institutions, have granted scholarships and fee waivers on a case-to-case basis on compassionate grounds, especially to those children whose parents died because of COVID, or they're severely affected because of the hospitalization bills. They all have been given rebates to the tune of 10 to 15%. In cases where there have been deaths, full fees have been waived till the completion of the education. It could be 1 year, it could be 2 years from there on. But they had taken these decisions. It is not a government order that dictated upon them to bring upon these scholarships and fee waivers. They had taken these on their own. Some of the schools and colleges connected with the immediate neighboring societies and communities to spread the good word, to spread the word of precaution, and help them take all the necessary steps to build the hope that we are still a welfare state, communicating very well that the government is doing well and we need to wait with patience. On the other hand, they also had built optimism that we need to help one another in times of crisis. The Good Samaritan was built, the optimism was held high, and the schools connected with the societies and communities in propagating these important values. It's time for us not to argue against the fees that they are charging. Administrative fees like food or bus transport, so on and so forth, is anyway not charged. The tuition fees which is charged by the schools and colleges and universities should be paid in full. Let us all work and preserve the value for education so that this education will preserve our societies, protect our children, and build our future. Thank you.
Well, with that, we conclude our first edition of the India Today Roundtable on the future of education.